Hello, everyone. This is Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. Welcome to Today in Bitcoin. Today is March the 8th, 2017. And on this second show of the day, we have a very special guest, Michael Krieger of Liberty Blitzkrieg. You've seen him on all sorts of channels on YouTube, from Greg Hunter to the Bitcoin Meister channel right now. So Michael Krieger, welcome to the show.
Hey, Adam, great to be on your show. It's a great show, and I'm happy to join you.
Now, usually you're talking about all sorts of financial subjects, but we're going to talk a lot about Bitcoin today because you have talked about Bitcoin on other channels before, but people are very interested in hearing, these guys, these alternative economic guys, what they have to say about Bitcoin. So I'm very excited. But tell us a little bit about your financial background, and then kind of how your Bitcoin story also.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in the financial capital of the United States, New York City, like right in the heart of the belly of the beast. After I went to college, I joined Lehman Brothers in 2000 in the equity research department. I was doing oil and gas research for about 5 years. Then I moved on to Sanford C. Bernstein, where I was the trading desk analyst doing commodities, all sorts of commodities. And I ended up over the course of my stay there, then branching out into all sorts of other things. I would talk about FX and gold and all that kind of stuff. And then really shortly after the financial crisis came and went, well, it didn't really go anywhere in my opinion. But after it came, I started having some severe ethical issues with being in the chair I was in and the industry I was in, and the way that I felt that the American public was railroaded out of, totally screwed, just to protect people like me who didn't need protecting. And it just became uninteresting as a profession to me. I wasn't doing it. I was never in a role where I felt like I was doing anything ethically wrong. However, I did feel like, why am I getting paid all this money for what I'm doing? It didn't make any sense. And then why do we need the government to bail out my paycheck? So I ended up leaving in early 2010. And since then, I've pretty much just been writing and commenting and also buying some Bitcoin since then. So that's kind of my story. My website, it gets published all over the alternative media, and then I do interviews, as you've noticed. Bitcoin, though, so for me, I still kick myself because I had heard about Bitcoin very, very early on, like shortly after white paper early. But I have no technical background. In fact, back then I was probably one of the most uninformed technical people you could ever find anywhere. I couldn't do anything at all. So I read about this, and I was already into gold and silver. I was already into alternative, things like that to get out of the system as a protest, as well as because I think they're going to torch the money eventually. But when I read about Bitcoin, I was like, this is interesting. I don't know if it was New Yorker or New York Magazine. I feel like it was written up early in one of those. And then I thought, okay, this is interesting, but I'm not getting involved in this. I can't really understand it. Fast forward to 2012. And I remember reading an article about how WikiLeaks was able to stay alive because they were taking Bitcoin donations. And at that point, I knew this is a real thing. If WikiLeaks, which I believe is extraordinarily important, and you saw what they released yesterday with the CIA, to freedom in the world and transparency and journalism, if they were able to survive only because of this thing called Bitcoin, well, that's something I'm interested in. So I wrote my first piece on Bitcoin publicly, even though I had kind of been talking about it behind the scenes with friends, in August of 2012. And shortly thereafter, I started getting donations in Bitcoin, allowing that on my site. And it's been something I've been very interested ever since. So I continue to not have much technical expertise. However, I see Bitcoin, I understand the revolutionary technology behind it, but I see it as a lot more than that as well. And I think there are a lot of lessons that we can draw from Bitcoin to how we can sort of, disrupt Meister, how we can disrupt things, right? It's not just Bitcoin. We need to disrupt everything. And I think we can take a lot of lessons from Bitcoin and the approach that the creators of Bitcoin took to screw around with the system. It was brilliant.
Wow, that is great. I like to hear that, because I think some people they might think you're more of a gold guy, but you didn't go from gold, like hardcore gold, to this. You were just interested in Bitcoin naturally. You thought it, even though you're not a tech guy, and we're going to get into that aspect of it very soon.
Right. Well, the one thing is, Adam, I was lucky that I have a friend a few friends actually, but one close friend who's very, very technically smart. So I was able to ask this person early on about Bitcoin. What is it? Is this, I asked all the questions that a typical skeptic would ask. And I got the answers that that were sufficient to me, before most people would have been able to understand it with my level of technical expertise.
Now, you see gold as a store of value, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Now, do you see Bitcoin being similar in that way? Do you see Bitcoin as a store of value? Is that what you use Bitcoin for currently?
No, I wouldn't say that, because I think to call something a store of value, very few things are actually a store of value historically, like gold is, right? Because it survives forever. It's been a store of value for thousands of years. I mean, a home can be a store of value for a few decades, but there's depreciation, right? There's all sorts of things, and then it can burn down, or you can have to flee. But gold truly is a store of value. I actually don't really see Bitcoin as a store of value as much as I see it as a potential to free human beings from the chains of fascist money, essentially. And so therefore, I don't really care, even though it would hurt me financially. Like if Bitcoin went away in 2 years and something better like Bitcoin took over, right? Yeah, I mean, I hope I would be involved in that thing early on, but that's not my primary interest in Bitcoin. It's always been as, wow, this is a way that we can send money or value from one person to another without permission, peer to peer. And in my opinion, we need to do that in everything. I've always been into like the farmers markets thing, the local, the decentralized way of seeing things. So that's how I see it. So I guess the best way to put it is I see it as it's currently a store of value. That's just a fact. That's just fact. But I don't see it like, oh, I'm going to hold my Bitcoin for 30 years and it's going to hold its value. It might go up spectacularly and it might not, but I don't really care. I'm more interested in the way that it empowers human beings.
That is great. I think a lot of people get excited about it for those reasons, those grand reasons, and I'm glad you've looked at it that way. Actually, yeah. Now we're talking about it possibly spiking in value. There are a lot of people who care about this ETF decision that's coming up on Friday or Monday or whenever it's coming up. And I see you actually read Vinny Lingham's tweets, because you referred to one of them when you were talking about the ETF. So so tell us about the ETF. What do you think? What your opinions are?
Yeah. So Vinny, I've been he caught my attention. Just a little background on that. Way back in, I think it was 2013 or something, where he was one of these guys that came out and said, it was right after it got to 1,000 the first time, and he said it could be years before we get back to these highs again, and he explained exactly why, and he was so right. People don't usually like to make calls like that, where they're not super bullish or super bearish, but he's just like, it's going to be boring for a few years. Who wants to read that, right? But he was right. And so I've been paying attention to him ever since then, and he's been the best, as far as price movements and why. And so he wrote an article about the ETF, as you know. It was a really good article. I hadn't really thought about it before then because I didn't really care, but he really laid out the case against it. And then I've been thinking about it myself over the last week or so, and I agree with him completely. I think the ETF would be bad for Bitcoin. I don't think it'd be a good thing. I mean, the price is going up without the ETF, so we don't need it to go to 3,000 tomorrow, right? It's doing just fine. And here's what it bothers me about it from a sort of philosophical standpoint. So me being in the financial industry, I'm familiar with ETFs. And so stocks, right, bonds and an ETF, that makes perfect sense because these are dead assets, right, essentially. A stock is just a share of ownership in a company, and a debt security is just a claim on cash flows of a company. So there's no reason why those things can't be pooled into a security that people buy. Bitcoin is different, right? Bitcoin is an actual sort of like living, breathing thing in a way. And you can do things with Bitcoin, right? By having it, you can store, there's all sorts of ways to store it. There's all sorts of ways to use it and spend it. And tip it, right? And I do that with my website. And I actually pay every month someone in a little bit of Bitcoin for services they do for my site. So I actually use it as this living thing. And I think by corralling it into a ETF, you're doing a couple of things. One, you're taking a living thing, you're centralizing it, and then you're getting people to buy it, but they're not really buying it. And the people that are buying the ETF will never learn about it. And when you buy Bitcoin yourself, right? Like for me, it forces you to learn a little bit. It forces you to, how am I going to secure this? Like, I better get up to speed on the latest security practices. These are lessons that are valuable to everyday life in this world that we live in. So I think it would be a crying shame if a lot of people got quote unquote exposure to Bitcoin through an ETF. I think it'd be almost a tragedy in some ways.
So what is your prediction? Do you think it'll be approved?
I haven't been paying enough attention to even have a thought on it. So I don't know. I mean, I guess, let me just go out there and just say yes, but I haven't put any thought into it, and I wouldn't try, I wouldn't put any stock into that answer.
Okay, very, very good answer. Very good answer. You talk about the great Bitcoin pundit, Vinny Lingham, and it's great that you read him. I mean, he's smart guy. Now let's talk about another pundit out there who's more of not a Bitcoin pundit, but a financial pundit, Peter Schiff. You heard Peter Schiff's Bitcoin debate. Where do you think Peter is going on this? Why is he not open to Bitcoin here? I mean, he seems. Yeah. I mean, you're a guy who's diversified into so many in many different things. What's up with Peter?
Yeah, so Schiff was one of these guys early on when I was still on Wall Street. I really liked him a lot. I mean, it's not like I don't like him now, but like I really looked up to him. You know, I'd see his videos, and he was one of the few people that's ever invited on these financial channels back in like 2007, right? That had a contrary view that was different and thoughtful. So I really liked him. He was an inspiration for a long time. He really lost me with the Bitcoin thing, but I said this all along. As soon as Bitcoin came out, I said that you could see the intellectually honest people in the gold community based on how they deal with Bitcoin. I mean, it'd be one thing for someone to say, I don't understand the technology, so I'm not going to comment or I'm not going to play around with it. But those people who bash it but love gold, to me, that right there, anyone that does that automatically becomes uninteresting to me. And so Schiff is actually in that camp in my view. He's not someone I seek out to listen to or watch or read anymore. Just because of that, I feel like this strange dislike of Bitcoin. I think part of it is human nature. I think that he was a hater from the very beginning. And a lot of times when you kind of dig in on a position and then it goes against you, you just don't want to capitulate and change your mind. And so I think that's part of it. I think the other part is he's not a tech. He doesn't really have any sort of tech chops at all. Neither did I, but I don't think he bothered to do the work. You know, a lot of the people in the gold world I found, and he is a big gold guy, as you know, and I like gold too. But a lot of people in that world that initially were skeptical of Bitcoin, they never said, let me check it out, right? Let me buy some, let me play around with it, let me learn about it, and then continue to be negative. Most people that actually take the time to get some Bitcoin or learn about it end up really liking it. I don't think Schiff really did the work, and I think he's just sticking to his original position, which is, why am I going to buy Bitcoin if I own gold? Well, I mean, it's gone up a lot more for one, and that's his job, right? But two, look, my position has been the whole time, own them both. I own them both. I've owned them both the whole time. Why do I need to choose? It's just a stupid, like, unless you want to make one or the other into a religious dogma, just have some of both.
Yeah, he's stubborn. He's stubborn, and I like your point. I like your point about intellectual dishonesty in the gold community. That maybe this is a way to. This is a test to see.
I think it is. I think it has been, actually. So a lot of people I used to kind of find interesting, I just don't anymore because of their position on Bitcoin.
And Andy Hoffman is a guy we both know who likes both, and he's a very honest man. So there you go, everyone.
Well, he's exactly. I respect that. He's a rare person who was really skeptical, really not into it, and completely changed his mind. And he still works at a gold company. So that's really impressive. Yeah, no, that was an impressive switch by him, and that's intellectual honesty right there, and curiosity as well.
Well, let me ask you, it is rare right now for gold guys to really start talking about Bitcoin in a very positive way, very open. Right. Do you think this will be a growing trend, that the intellectually dishonest will be weeded out and other new voices will pop up amongst the precious metals community?
Maybe. I don't know. I sort of feel like the interesting question on that would be, what is a young person, like someone who's 25 or 26 who realizes, right, that the currency system is fraudulent, messed up, corrupt. does that person go to gold or does that person go to Bitcoin? You know, I don't know. Like so many of us, like for example, me, when I first realized how shady the system is and that I wanted out of it, Bitcoin didn't exist, right? So I went to, you know, what did, which was precious metals. I don't know how I would have responded if I figured everything out when Bitcoin was already alive. So I think you have to also understand that a lot of the people in the gold community, they're older people. These are people that have been in these metals for decades, some of them. So for them, it's too much of a psychological change. They can't even fathom it. The other thing I would also point out, which I think is part of it, is that there's a lot of frustration amongst people in the metals because it hasn't done what it was supposed to do. And all of a sudden, this thing that was $10 in 2012 is now worth $1,200. And I think there's a little envy there. They'll never admit it, but I think there is a little bit of envy. Like, I was supposed to get this kind of gain, right? You know, what is this? You know, that sucks, but that's also human nature. I think we both know that.
I think that's a great point about the envy and the human nature there. It's really that's a very interesting discussion. I want to move on to since you have all this financial expertise, you've been in different aspects of the financial world with Bitcoin, and I'm not going to get into the technical sides of segregated witness and Bitcoin Unlimited because that's not your thing.
No.
But what would the financial world think of this new financial instrument called Bitcoin if it suddenly split into two Bitcoins, if there was a Bitcoin 1 and a Bitcoin 2?
Yeah, no, I think that would be absolutely horrible. Because for so many reasons. Number one, I still have a lot of friends that work in the business. And I do have some friends that got into Bitcoin early, partly from me, you know, telling them about it. But it's really interesting how few people on Wall Street that I know have, you know, like your average employees and stuff, but that are successful, own any Bitcoin or own any material Bitcoin still to this day. And I find that so strange for an instrument, right? For these people are traders, and they don't own it. And I think part of the reason they don't own it is, as we discussed, it's intimidating in some ways, right? They don't understand it. You have to understand the technology before you can put a significant amount of money into something. So if we're already at the point where sort of sophisticated people that are used to investing are still like shying away, to do something like that would just add a layer of, oh yeah, I'm not touching this. So yeah, no, I don't think that would be good at all, because people are already, you know, at this point having trouble understanding. I think people are afraid of, you know, storing it. You know, am I gonna get hacked and lose all my Bitcoin? So something like that. Yeah, no, I don't think you want to, you know, put any sort of uncertainty like that into it. And I remember when Ether did, right? They did a hard fork, didn't they? And that, I didn't think that was good. The prices come back, but I didn't think that was good at all for at least the sentiment or the perception of what it was.
Well, in terms of the Bitcoin price of Ethereum, I just did a video on this. It has not come back yet. I mean,
oh yeah, I did see that. Right. Yeah.
And the momentum, it was possibly stopped. We'll never know what it would have been.
Right. But that's right. It's true.
I have a question about the future. Now, let's say Bitcoin just, you know, there's no hard fork. It just continues as is, whatever. Do you have a price prediction for Bitcoin in 2020 around the next Bitcoin halving?
Okay. My guess would be 2020. My guess would be probably 5,000 to 10,000. And if not, then like much lower, you know, from here, like much lower than here. So it's binary. And I've always said this about Bitcoin. For anyone that asks, I always said to people, 1% of your assets, you know, like if you want to be more risky, be more risky. But it's basically a call option, in my opinion, with no expiration date. And you should see it that way, right? It could be zero, but it could go up 50 times from here, you know, and that's always been the profile of Bitcoin. I continue to see that as the profile of Bitcoin. I personally think it will be in that higher range, because when I look around, and as I said, the people that I know that actually know, a lot of people are interested in Bitcoin, but not many people I know actually own a lot of Bitcoin. So we're still really, really far from this being like a retail thing. And that's usually when you get the bubbles, right? When you get a lot of retail participation. We don't have that in Bitcoin. So as long as, in my opinion, as long as something doesn't happen with the Bitcoin network, and I think you were alluding to that before, like some serious problem or uncertainty with the network itself, then in around 2020, I would say that at least that price range. the biggest risk to Bitcoin is something with the network happening, or like you say, with like the forks. So hopefully that stuff gets sorted away, but that's above my pay grade.
So yes, everyone should take note of this, how important stability is in the traditional finance industry here. We don't want crazy things happening, or else things will get stunted, definitely.
And you want to understand, right? Because the whole thing with Bitcoin that people have been saying, right? People have been saying is, oh, it's steady, it's this, we know what to expect, we know what's going on and all that. And then all of a sudden people are like, wait a minute, you can just do this, or you can just mess it up this easily. I thought that couldn't happen, right? So got to be careful, yeah.
So do you have an opinion on what Roger Ver is thinking? What's going through his head?
Why? I haven't, you know what, the only thing, look, I follow him on Twitter, and sometimes, you know, some of the tweets I see, I'm sort of just like, whoa, like what is he doing, you know? But I don't, you know, I don't have the expertise, and so I can't say that he's wrong. He seems very, well, they call him Bitcoin Jesus. He seems very evangelical about his view, you know? So he's very, 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 very stubbornly into this one idea that I guess a lot of other people that I like and follow in Bitcoin don't agree with. That's my one observation, you know, is that he is the outlier versus almost everyone else I respect as being much more knowledgeable on Bitcoin than me, and who I like their opinions of. So I'd say that's the strange thing, but I couldn't give you my opinion in a thoughtful, constructive way on the debate at all.
Now you mentioned Ethereum, so I know you know about these altcoins. Do you have a favorite altcoin? Do you have an opinion on these altcoins?
No, well, yes, at this moment I do, and I tweeted about it a little bit today. So I don't own any altcoins at the moment, really. And two things disturbed me recently. So if you guys out there own the altcoins, I'm just saying, like from a Wall Street perspective, the things that have always worked the best are the sentiment calls, right? And when you see certain things out there that you kind of feel like, wait a minute, that's like a disturbance in the force, something's wrong here, it's usually not a good thing. So two things. Number one, over the last couple of days, someone close to me, not going to say who, mentioned Ethereum to me. What do I think of Ethereum? Now, this person has no business asking me about Ethereum. So that's a red flag to me. Number two, right, this person never bought Bitcoin, right, all that stuff. Doesn't know about this space. Number two, this person also told me that now they don't own any Bitcoin, but they have a friend who made a little bit of money on Ethereum and now is dumping a lot of money in it because he thinks it's going to go, you know, through the roof. That's a huge red flag for me, right? I think Ethereum scares me based on sentiment like that. Number two, Bloomberg, I think it was today or yesterday, published an article talking about how people who think they missed out on Bitcoin are buying Dash, Monero, and Ethereum. And read the article, right? I mean, it's like these people are like, well, Bitcoin's expensive. Like, this is where it's at. These other ones. This is a red flag. From my experience on Wall Street, you start seeing Bloomberg talking about Dash. That's sold, you know, like, and that doesn't mean it can't go through the roof over a longer time period. But from a short-term perspective, I see something like that, and if I owned it, I'd probably just dump it right now. I mean, I probably would have, but I don't own any. And don't take this as investment advice. I'm just saying that these are red flags from a sentiment standpoint on the altcoin front.
That is very interesting perspective. I actually mentioned that article in a video I made earlier today, actually, and I will link to that article below because I thought the article was kind of a fluff piece. They weren't trying to interview experts or anything like that.
Oh, no, they interviewed the guy that was like working on Dash, about Dash. Did you see that? That was kind of weird. Like, do you think Dash is going to do good?
Yeah, and they made sure they interviewed two women, and yet the cryptocurrency community is made up of like 95% men. It just seemed to be a politically correct, just like a really, I don't know.
But that's more concerning even. That it was a puff piece, right? Because it
was a cookie cutter. It was a cookie cutter piece.
But the fact that they wanted, right? The fact that someone at Bloomberg wanted to write, some editor said, write a piece on Dash and Ether. You know, we need to get this out there. That's telling me that everyone knows about these things now, and that's like I said, that would concern me if I own them.
So this is actually a gateway into a larger subject about I guess the state of how the world works, and you have a lot of opinions, and you actually referenced some of them before about I guess the system and there are a lot of people who go on the channels that you go on who are very negative, and they just worry a lot, and just
Right.
do a lot of FUD
Yeah.
and talk about World War III.
Right.
Now you seem to have a very positive. You present everything in a very positive way. What do you think of the state of the world? Is there positive opportunity, or is the world going to end?
Right. So one of the things I'm not going to go too much into it. No, I definitely don't think the world's going to end. I'm not in that camp. And if I did, like, why are we even doing this? Like, why bother waking up in the morning and breathing? If the world is going to end, what's the point of worrying about it? Right. I mean, it's
exactly.
So no, I don't go down that route. I haven't for a long time. I mean, maybe in the beginning when when I first, kind of figured out how bad things were. But so there's something I was writing about recently. It's called Spiral Dynamics. It's basically about consciousness. And the guy who originally came up with the theory, he wrote an article in 1974 about a momentous leap for humankind. And his theory was that there's this next stage of consciousness that certain humans are starting to exhibit patterns of. And if we can get a certain percentage of the population to start thinking like that, then the whole world will change. I'm a buyer of that view. And so ever since I've really started digging into this, I've become convinced that the key thing is people like us who are aware that there are serious problems, but also see that there are incredible things happening in the world. We need to say, okay, things are bad. I mean, I believe that our entire economy pretty much is a fraudulent, rent-seeking, parasitic entity, where people that have most of the money are just sucking money out of the population. So that's bad. That doesn't mean we can't change this thing. And so I actually highlighted Bitcoin as a great example of what you would call second-tier thinking, because what it did was it said, we're just going to create something that allows people to opt out, right? To opt out of this system. And if you can do it with money, which is probably the hardest thing to do it with, because it's been tried before, like with e-gold and like Liberty Dollar, they always put you in jail. If it can be done with money, it can be done with all sorts of things. And so what I'm hopeful of is that the creative minds out there and people with technology chops as well, we're thinking in a very intelligent way about the problems that we have. And I believe that the human beings have the capacity to make this world much more incredible place than we can even imagine in my lifetime. However, it's a caveat, I do think that it will require some sort of horrible crisis for more people to realize how bad it is, and more people work on these kinds of solutions. So I do think that the next 4 years to maybe 8 or 10 will be a really bad time in a lot of ways for the world. However, I think that out of that bad time, we could create a planet for human beings so positive that we almost can't imagine it right now. So it's like, really negative in the near term, really optimistic in the longer term. That's how I would put it.
Now, you mentioned a bad time, a disaster, but at the same time, do you believe that people who are smart and who know about Bitcoin per se, who are watching this video now, can actually just live life pretty normally during such a period?
Yes, I absolutely do. Like, so for example, I think a lot of this is mindset as well. Okay, so if you already know it's kind of bad or it's going to be bad, it's like all the Eastern religions, right? The whole concept of like mindfulness and things like that is the acceptance that you cannot control most of the things that happen in your life. You can control some things, but most of it is out of your control. And so what matters is how your mind deals with what comes your way. So I think people like us, people that are aware of what's going on, people that are emotionally, stable, we're going to be, as bad as things might get around us, we can stay grounded and live a really good life, maybe even better life than ever before. What I meant was that if this system, I believe the system died in around 2008, 2009, and everything since then is just being like propping it up as a show, to try to like make everyone think it's fine, but it's not fine. So we're actually living in a system that is dead in the inside. It's a carcass of what the system used to be. And so I find it hard to believe that this thing will continue to disintegrate, which I believe it will, whether it's rapidly or slowly, and that won't cause a lot of turmoil for people, right? Like you see with the election and Trump, that was a reflection of pain. That was a reflection of backlash. of 8 years of people getting poorer for the most part, relative to the really, really wealthy as well. So yeah. So overall, it's going to be hard for people. I think most people, because look, most people don't even really know how things work. Most people don't have Bitcoin, right? Most people, right? So for most people, it's going to be pretty rough. But that makes the importance of some of us even more. We're even more important because of that, and it's important that we have a level head as well. Because if we get on here and like, oh my, it's going to be nuclear war, like buy a bunker. That's not a good. I'm not doing that.
All right, that's an excellent answer. Now we have some live viewers here, and actually there's a question. Now, live viewers, remember to like this video because it's been an awesome video so far. Please hit that like button right now, pound on it. So on this WikiLeaks release that just came out, obviously there's a lot more. They're talking about spying and all of those lovely things. The viewer asked, how can we protect our liberty in a society that doesn't respect individual liberty?
Right. So that's actually right. I was very much against the idea that you get the government you deserve. I never liked that saying because I felt like it was wrong. But more and more I've come to accept the fact that in the United States we do get the government we deserve. So for me, from my end, I believe, and this is why I do what I do, I believe the only way that we can have liberty and we can hold rogue intelligence agencies to account and actually make them accountable, make them democratic. I mean, the deep state is out of control. I mean, no one holds them to account, and they can take over your iPhone and your TV, right? Is to convince as many people as possible that this is a problem, and have because I am of the view, if you look back at history, even the most despotic regimes crumble. Right, the worst ones with all the spying, right? Stalin and Eastern Romania and East Germany, and then outside of the Western world, they collapse eventually. And whenever the people, even like the French Revolution, like who would have thought that the peasants could have overthrown that powerful French monarchy? But they did. When people get fed up, enough people get fed up, and they're willing to sacrifice, right, some comforts. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's other, maybe it's even their own individual liberty, right? When we as a society get enough people that are willing to put up that kind of a fight, we can make this government, we can make this world, whatever, the world we want to live in. So to me, this is mostly a function of apathy from our fellow citizens. We need a critical mass, and it's not everyone, but it's much more than we've got, of people who truly care about liberty and truly care about essentially dismantling the deep state as it exists today. But we're not there yet, unfortunately. We're not an ethical, informed society that can do that, right? We're just not there. So long story short, education, getting people and getting people to be brave, courageous. We're not a courageous people, right? We think we are because we can throw drones on like poor people in huts, but that's not courage. Courage is willing to stand up for what you believe in at personal risk. And most Americans are not willing to do that at all.
Wow. Well, we've gotten into a deep subject here, so we're going to return back to Bitcoin here. Get that? No, because this all has to do with it. This is your expertise. This is your thing. We get different perspectives here. I like this. I think people are really enjoying this. With Bitcoin. What do you think about buying and holding versus flipping? A lot of people are just into trading Bitcoin. I mean, is this something that people should be trading? I mean, what do you think?
So I don't do that, which is a good thing, because I was never a really good trader. My skill was always sort of seeing the big macro picture and taking the macro bet, and Bitcoin was, that's what I've done. I've bought it when it's dipped a lot, and I just hold it. So that's what I recommend. I mean, for people that are interested in Bitcoin, no, I definitely wouldn't recommend trading. However, like if you're a professional trader, go for it. I know people who are amazing traders. Like, I don't even know how they do it, but they just got this feel, and they're good. And those people, professionals, could probably trade Bitcoin and make a lot of money. But you know what? From being 10 years in the financial world and also, trying some trading myself, I can tell you this: everyone thinks they could be a good trader, and it's maybe 1 out of 20 that's even decent. So if you think you can be a good trader, you probably can't. Go ahead and try, but I don't recommend trading Bitcoin unless you are a professional trader.
Yeah, there are a lot of 19-year-old kids out there that think they're good at trading, and I try
everyone thinks they're good at it until you really try
to warn them. I try to
Yeah.
warn them. So, are there any other Bitcoin pundits? You mentioned Vinny Lingham. Anyone else that you follow out there?
I mean, obviously, like the standard guys, right? Like Andreas Antonopoulos was someone I was really, I've been interested in from the very beginning. Other than that, not so much, just because at this point, it's sort of like I don't talk about gold that much anymore. I don't talk about finance stuff so much anymore because I got my Bitcoin. I love Bitcoin. I just don't, I don't follow it as much as I used to when I was sort of getting up to speed on what was going on. My focus changes all the time, though. So like sometimes it's gold, sometimes it's Bitcoin, sometimes it's politics. Right now, it's very much politics, geopolitics and politics. So I'm not the best guy to tell you on that, but Vinny is. But I always read Vinny, no matter what. I will read any post he puts out because I mean, he gives me the information that I'm looking for. But I did see that. I did actually want to ask you a question, if you don't mind. Flip it around for a second. So I noticed the other day someone sent me a small payment in Bitcoin, like a tip of $1. And he mentioned to me on Twitter that it cost him like 50 cents to send that. Does that sound right to you? And see, when I heard that, and I'd heard rumors of that before, but when I heard that, I did think, okay, well, that kind of seems like a problem. I get that that's related to the whole debate you mentioned earlier, but what are your thoughts on the fact that you can't really do it seems like you can't really do micropayments right now, given the congestion.
No.
Right?
Yeah, you definitely, you can't right now. You can't.
Right,
that is true. But how many people really need to do that?
Right,
That's the thing. Where's the demand? You can do micropayments in Litecoin. You can do it in Dash. So your friend did pay 50 cents to send $1. Yes, that is going on. And that's why the core team wants to implement segregated witness. Right. Which does not involve a hard fork. Right. At the same time, if we maintain the status quo where that keeps happening, then yeah, micropayments are not going to be a Bitcoin thing. Is that the end of the world? I don't know. There are other altcoins that can do it easily, that can do it fast, that can do it better than Bitcoin currently. Are people using those altcoins right now? That these unscientific poll that I saw, 95% of the people do not use. And again, it's unscientific. 95% of the people don't use Bitcoin for daily transactions. So we'll if there was now again, it isn't good that you have to pay 50 cents to send $1, but how many people are doing it? Is it a problem for Bitcoin now? If it was, the market will demand it, and there will be a lot of pressure to do segregated witness, or to, God forbid, do Bitcoin Unlimited. Or we will notice first that other altcoins are being used for these things, which right now, as you saw, altcoins are just used for speculation. People are gambling on them. That's what they're used for.
So segregated witness would in your view, deal with that problem?
Yes, it would fix it.
Okay,
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I just
would. That's what.
Yeah. I agree. It's not like one of these things where I heard that and I said, "Oh, wow, we need to do fix it tomorrow." But I am of the belief, seeing that in real time, because people do donate micropayments to me, my website, and this will de-incentivize that. Which I think is a shame. So I think it's a problem, but I don't think it's like something that needs to be solved tomorrow.
Well, let me tell you, just accept Litecoin, Ethereum Classic, Ethereum. Just put other addresses up there. People like it. Right now, there's all these people in the chat that are hardcore. They want me to ask you about Ethereum Classic. I'm like, he doesn't know about Ethereum Classic. No. But it just shows you there are people that are hardcore about this kind of thing. So they'll be happy if you just mention Ethereum Classic on your blog once. I mean, you'll get some Ethereum Classic for it. Right. There's and you'll get your micropayments. So there's an idea. But you bring up a very good point here. You're a finance guy. You're not a technical guy. You don't know about segregated witness. You don't want to know about segregated witness, really. What do you think? Does all this tech talk scare people away? And what do you think about the user experience with Bitcoin right now? Is it it's not easy yet, is it?
I think it's fine. I actually don't really see that as a huge problem. I mean, where I think people get concerned, I've told people to buy it and buy it at Coinbase. The problem is, like, someone like you and others will say never store anything on Coinbase, and I get that. But for these people, right, that have less technical expertise than me, which isn't a lot, what are they going to do? Are they going to buy the Trezor? Are they going to do that? I mean, maybe eventually, but not right away. So I think that personally, on that front, though, I feel like because I was in Bitcoin, I remember when I first bought my first Bitcoin, I remember sending that wire transfer to Japan for Mt. Gox and being like, what am I doing? Like, what the heck? It's like, this is stupid. Like, if anyone knew I was doing this, they would kill me. But it actually was a good idea. But at the time, it seemed like I was losing my mind, sending a bunch of money to some random address in Japan. But when I compare the user experience then to now, it's night and day. It's so much better. I bought a Trezor and I just set that up and I don't have much technical expertise. So if I could do that, then it means we're going in the right direction. And so my feeling is that's definitely a problem that's already working itself out and will continue to work itself out. So it's still somewhat esoteric and difficult, but I think that's okay. I don't think it's too difficult. And I think Bitcoin is doing just fine on that front.
Okay. Well, I got two more questions for you here. Okay. We've spoken about freedom and we've actually spoken about altcoins also. So let's combine the two subjects. What do you think about these initial coin offerings, these ICOs, where people basically are creating a coin and they get a bunch of people to buy in before they create the coin? It's a free market. It's a way to raise funds to create a coin, but it's totally unregulated,
right,
and totally out there. And obviously, people could just create scams out of the blue. Do you have an opinion on the ICOs?
Not really, but based on your description, it's something that, I don't really love a lack of transparency like that. I feel like Bitcoin was, and there's all that knock about, the original miners, the original creator have all the first Bitcoin. So what? I mean, if you develop a revolutionary technology that changes the world and you give it out for free, so what if you got a bunch of the early Bitcoins? But I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like that was a very transparent process. You might not like the process, but I feel like the process was transparent. If you heard about it and you became a miner in the early days, you could have had them too. So I think anything with, I think it's all about transparency. If there's low transparency as far as how, the money, comes in or who's getting it and how they distribute it afterwards. And, I do think it's an opportunity for tons of scamming. So, for me, I would be pretty skeptical about that stuff. And particularly if it's like, do you know who these people that are doing these coins are? I mean, can they be held accountable if something goes wrong? It's a big risk, So that means for someone like me, I wouldn't play it. I wouldn't bother playing that game. I would just wait until the coin is somewhat kind of established and it looks good, and people that know what they're talking about have vetted it. It's been used and things like that. So yeah, I wouldn't put money into it in like an initial coin offering.
Okay, so finally, is there anything that I left out, anything that excites you about Bitcoin that you wanted to mention? And of course, please mention how people can get in touch with you, your blog, and anything that's going on in your life.
Yeah, so just final point with Bitcoin I really want to make, and I hope people think about it from this perspective, and I just touched on it, right? Whoever created Bitcoin brilliantly figured out a way to make money for himself or herself, whoever it was, or the group, while benefiting humanity for free, open source. So I think that model needs to be reflected upon by people in every single industry on the planet. And I wrote about this the other day. So if we talk about like healthcare, right? Someone comes up with a cure for cancer, let's say. Maybe that person or group should think about, rather than selling it right to a big pharma company and it's just going to potentially bleed the world dry, think about potentially getting it out there for free and maybe figuring out a way you can make yourself money. Again, I think that we really need to start thinking about the broader planet and how we can benefit people by the inventions that are coming. Really benefit. So I'm thinking like stuff like cheaper energy sources. I'm thinking about healthcare technology revolution, which I believe is coming. I think we're going to have all these incredible inventions. My concern is that they're just going to be used to just take money from people. It'll benefit people too. But I think the model of Bitcoin, of getting it out there and letting people just use it for free, is an incredible model. And I think people should really think about how that can be applied to other things. As far as reaching me, so my website's libertyblitzkrieg.com, Liberty, BLITZKRIEG.com. These days, I'm mostly writing about politics and what we need to do on that level to sort of, get the conversation going. Because right now, we're talking about stupidity 24/7 in U.S. politics. And I think it is important that human beings start talking about real issues here, because things aren't very good on the ground for most people. Twitter @LibertyBlitz. And so you can sign up to get my emails for free. There's no subscription charge for what I do on the blog. If you feel like you got value out of this or what I do, there's Bitcoin tip addresses on my site. And there's also, you can donate in other ways as well if you want to donate and support what I do. And that's kind of it, Adam. Thanks.
Well, Michael Krieger, Liberty Blitzkrieg, thank you so much for being on the show today. It was totally awesome, man. It was so much different type of information. So remember, everyone, like this video, check out his blog. I'm Adam Meister, the Bitcoin Meister, the Disrupt Meister. That was Today in Bitcoin. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye, everyone.